Welcome to the Daily Globe. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In a decision that will reverberate for years to come, sending shockwaves through the highest levels of government and industry, the United States Supreme Court has struck down President Donald Trump's sweeping 2025 global tariff policy, a move that has instantly become one of the most consequential legal rebukes of a sitting president's economic agenda in modern history. The court's ruling fundamentally challenges the extent of presidential authority in international trade, reasserting Congress's constitutional role in setting economic policy and drawing a clear line between executive power and legislative oversight. This verdict marks a pivotal moment for American consumers, businesses, and global partners alike, signaling a possible end to recent trade wars and years of economic uncertainty. For many, it offers hope for more stable prices and renewed international cooperation, while others brace for the complexities of unwinding years of tariff-driven policy. The tariffs, justified under the banner of national security, sparked fierce debate and a series of legal battles, with critics arguing they imposed unsustainable burdens on American families and businesses and overstepped the intended limits of executive power. Now, with the highest court's intervention, the nation faces urgent questions about massive financial refunds, the fate of ongoing trade negotiations, and the broader future of U.S. trade policy. The economic ripple effects could be felt for years, as companies and consumers adjust to a new reality. At its core, this legal battle tested the very heart of the constitutional system of checks and balances, pitting presidential emergency powers against Congress's authority to tax and regulate commerce. The outcome reaffirms the delicate separation of powers that underpins American democracy. The Supreme Court's judgment is a powerful reminder that executive action, even in times of crisis or uncertainty, has limits, and that those limits are enforced by the rule of law. The decision sets a precedent that will shape presidential power for generations, influencing how future leaders approach both domestic and international economic challenges. It also opens the door for a potential reset in global trade relations, as allies and rivals alike watch America's next moves. Yet, the political and economic aftershocks of this historic ruling are only beginning to unfold, leaving the nation and the world waiting to see what comes next in this new chapter of American governance. President Trump's tariffs, introduced as a response to the fentanyl crisis, targeted goods from China, Mexico, and Canada, and later expanded under the Liberation Day policy. The administration invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, claiming broad authority to impose tariffs during national emergencies. Critics argued IEPA was never meant to grant the president unchecked power to levy tariffs, a core congressional function under the Commerce Clause. Businesses and states challenged the tariffs as unconstitutional taxes, insisting only Congress can impose such measures. This conflict over separation of powers is not new, but Trump's sweeping tariffs brought the issue to a head. Plaintiffs warned that allowing unilateral tariffs would erase Congress's role in trade policy. The legal battle became a defining test of executive versus legislative power in the modern era. The legal fight began in the U.S. Court of International Trade, where judges ruled that IEPA does not grant the president unlimited tariff authority. The decision was upheld by a federal appeals court, which declared that imposing tariffs is a core congressional power and that Trump had overstepped constitutional bounds. This created a legal crisis for the administration, threatening a central pillar of its agenda. The White House urgently appealed to the Supreme Court, arguing that the lower courts misunderstood IEPA and jeopardized national security. The Supreme Court agreed to hear the case on an expedited basis, consolidating it with similar challenges from American businesses. The central question: does IEPA allow a president to unilaterally impose global tariffs? The nation awaited a definitive answer from the highest court. The Supreme Court moved swiftly, setting oral arguments for November 2025 and signaling the urgency of the case. Billions in tariffs were being collected daily, creating economic turmoil and legal uncertainty. During arguments, the administration insisted the president needed IEPA's flexibility to address threats like fentanyl, while opponents argued only Congress can tax and regulate commerce. The justices weighed the major questions doctrine, which requires clear congressional authorization for actions of vast significance. On September 12, 2025, the court issued its decision. IEPA does not authorize the president to enact such sweeping tariffs. The ruling affirmed that taxing and regulating trade is a legislative function, not an executive one. By striking down the tariffs, the court reinforced the separation of powers. This decision will be studied and debated for decades. The economic fallout from the tariffs is staggering. $475 billion collected in 2025 alone, with up to $1 trillion at stake for potential refunds. Key industries like construction and manufacturing shed tens of thousands of jobs as material costs soared. The tariffs drove up prices for everyday goods, fueling inflation and eroding household purchasing power. Small and medium businesses, unable to absorb the costs, led the legal fight as their survival was threatened. The Supreme Court's decision offers relief, but the damage, lost jobs, higher prices, and disrupted supply chains, has already been done. The government now faces the logistical nightmare of processing massive refunds. For many, rebuilding from a year of uncertainty will be a long road. The numbers tell a story of economic pain and the high cost of unchecked executive action. The Supreme Court's decision sent shockwaves worldwide, with headlines dominating news cycles and social media feeds across continents. Relief was palpable in Canada and Mexico, who had long viewed the tariffs as unjust and damaging to vital trade agreements that underpin their economies. Both countries are now poised to lift retaliatory tariffs, signaling a new era of cooperation and optimism for cross-border commerce. This move paves the way for normalized trade, restoring confidence among exporters and importers alike. China, the main target of the tariffs and a central player in global supply chains, welcomes the ruling as a victory for global free trade, seeing it as a chance to reassert its role in international commerce. The decision opens the door to restart negotiations and rebuild trust among trading partners. Global markets surged on the news, with investors reacting positively to the prospect of fewer trade barriers and renewed economic growth. Businesses worldwide now anticipate more stable, predictable trade conditions, fueling hopes for increased investment and job creation. The ruling removes a major source of uncertainty that had loomed over the global economy for years, but deep US-China tensions remain unresolved, casting a shadow over future negotiations. The Trump administration must now rethink its trade strategy, forced to adapt without a key tool in its arsenal. With tariffs off the table, policymakers face tough choices about how to protect American interests. For the world, the decision highlights both the enduring strength of America's judiciary and the unpredictability of its politics, which can reshape global relationships overnight. The diplomatic and economic path forward will be challenging, requiring careful negotiation and renewed commitment from all sides. Yet, the door is open for renewed cooperation, and the world watches closely as a new chapter in global trade begins. The Supreme Court's ruling is a landmark check on presidential power, reaffirming that only Congress can tax and regulate foreign commerce. The majority opinion rejected the use of IEEPA as a catch-all for imposing tariffs, setting a precedent that future presidents must heed. The decision applies the major questions doctrine, requiring explicit congressional authorization for actions of vast economic impact. For President Trump, it's a major defeat, dismantling a signature policy and weakening his negotiating position. The administration must now seek legislative approval or alternative, less powerful tools for trade policy. The case strengthens Congress's hand and may embolden lawmakers to reclaim their constitutional authority. For Americans, it's a vivid demonstration of checks and balances in action. Legal and economic experts are now grappling with the aftermath, especially the daunting task of refunding up to $1 trillion in tariffs. This unprecedented situation has sent shockwaves through both the legal and financial communities, as they try to interpret the full scope of the ruling and its implications for global trade. The sheer scale of the refunds is staggering, and the logistics of returning such vast sums are raising new questions every day. Refunds will likely require importers to file claims, a complex and lengthy process, with little direct benefit for consumers. Many businesses are bracing for months, if not years, of administrative hurdles and legal wrangling. For small importers, the paperwork alone could be overwhelming, while larger corporations are already assembling teams of lawyers and accountants to navigate the maze. The removal of tariffs should lower prices over time, but immediate relief for households is unlikely. Retailers and suppliers may take time to adjust, and existing inventories purchased at higher costs could delay any noticeable drop in prices. For everyday families, the impact may be subtle at first, gradually easing the burden on household budgets as the market recalibrates. Legally, the decision clarifies IEEPA's limits and signals that vague statutes won't justify sweeping executive action. This sets a new precedent for how far presidential authority can reach in matters of trade and national security, reinforcing the importance of clear legislative intent and judicial oversight. Future administrations will need to work more closely with Congress on major economic policies. The days of unilateral executive action in this arena are likely over, meaning bipartisan negotiation and legislative compromise will become essential for any significant economic shift. The ruling restores constitutional order and curbs the long-term expansion of presidential power. It reaffirms the checks and balances at the heart of American democracy, ensuring that no single branch can unilaterally reshape the nation's economic landscape. Economically, the president's unilateral tariff tool is gone, shifting the focus to diplomacy and legislation. International partners are watching closely, as the U.S. redefines its approach to trade negotiations and economic policy. The world welcomes the stability, but whether this leads to bipartisan cooperation or more gridlock remains to be seen. As the dust settles, all eyes are on Washington to see if this new era will foster collaboration or deepen political divides. The Supreme Court's decision is a powerful affirmation of checks and balances, limiting executive power even in the name of national security. The ruling doesn't judge the tariffs' wisdom, but asserts that only Congress can impose them. The immediate challenges: processing massive refunds and repairing strained trade relationships. Businesses and consumers may see prices stabilize, but recovery from job losses and supply chain disruptions will take time. The administration must recalibrate its trade strategy without unilateral tariffs. This case shows the court's vital role in holding government accountable and upholding the rule of law. The next chapters will be shaped by how the administration, Congress, and the economy respond to this historic day. The story of America's economic and political future is still being written,